Ciao Juventini, and welcome to the first official podcast of the Bianconetti Bros. I'm your host, John Borg, along with your co-host,
Domenico.
my co-host, not your co-host. Anyway, whatever. Domenico and John, we're here with you. This is our first official podcast where we're actually going to talk Juventus news. Last one was obviously our intro one, which if you want to give it a listen, it's a real quick one, 8 minutes. You can just hear a bit about who we are, what we're going to bring to you, and what's going on. But Dom, how's everything going, buddy? We purposely kind of held off talking about each other in the last one to get it through here. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Excited to be here, man. Excited to do this. Finally, it's been a couple of weeks. We kind of just been, okay, it's just an idea. Let's start. It's starting. And it all started with talking about the Leafs and just straight depression.
Yes. So then we decided to put more of our anger into a platform that we can talk about some of this stuff. And Juventus is our other love as well, our main love. And
more depression to come.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm not being a pessimist.
Well, we'll get into it. Don't give your thoughts all the way here. But it's good you got that energy because there's a lot to go through. A lot's going on in the world of Juventus specifically, a lot in Serie A, coaching carousels, everything's going on, but the club we love has had everything flying around. Rumors, real action. We're going to get into it, and let's start right away with, we're going to talk about the management right now. So clearly, we have some big news on the management side. It's Comoli In, Giuntoli Out. So first, let's start with the Comoli In. This is big news. Obviously, he's coming in with Giorgio Chiellini. Obviously, big moves ahead. What are your first initial thoughts on the hire?
Well, we watched a bit of a video on him coming on as a Monaco U17, playing with Thuram. Kind of realized he didn't have it anymore. I'd seen players like that a cut above that level, and he wanted to be involved in the sports and just be started young as a coach, right? And then he got into management with Toulouse, and I don't know too much about him. He kind of dabbled with Arsenal as a scout for a bit with Arsene Wenger there. But it seems like Chiellini is going to have more of a hands-on role as well.
Well, and I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. Comoli, while, there can be some excitement, I think with a lot of these management people, you don't know what you're really expecting from them. You can look at their past. There's so many different layers that go into it. He had some time at Liverpool and Tottenham. Not the greatest. There were some big signings attributed to him in there, but to me, the one that obviously stands out is Chiellini and getting back to having that core, the Juventus family back in the system, and Chiellini having a big role. Was a leader on the pitch. He even went to MLS and won the championship. Didn't just mail it in. He tried. He cared about that LAFC team, and that's what he continues to do. He's on broadcast about the World Cup. He's getting out there on the Stick to Football podcast. He's getting his name out there. And now being in management, he can do that and bring that for Juventus going forward. So on the Comoli side, I'll quickly say, it seems like a bit of an analytics-driven hire. That seems to be what he's kind of known for. Again, if you want to listen to the podcast, we can send the link out and have somewhere for you guys to actually watch it. It was pretty good. It gave us a bit of a better appreciation for how he manages analytics with the rest of the team, with the rest of the organization. So it wasn't fully analytics, but I guess with these, to your point, don't really know at this point, and it's going to be a wait and see. But bringing Chiellini along with him is the big plus for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I don't know if it's kind of strange, right? As soon as Giuntoli gets announced out, you see Chiellini more hands-on. And it seemed like that Giuntoli didn't want that when he was there. And Chiellini wanted to get more involved. And it looks like John Elkann also had a say in that as well, getting him more involved. Seems like John is more involved in this now. And I don't know if that's a good thing. We see Ferrari right now and how they're doing with the races currently. So
yeah. Well, and he seems like somebody who's enamored with the big names. Case in point, with your analogy of Ferrari going to Lewis Hamilton, Elkan hasn't really shown that pedigree of winning since he's managed the team. We haven't done much, and there's been more turmoil. I would say more negative going on than positive at times. But to me, this is going to be one of his big steps forward. And if he's got the right pieces in place here, that'll be a big step towards everyone having some buy-in with himself as well. But the biggest one you bring up there, Giuntoli out. Now, Comoli is more of a director. Chiellini's more of a management of the player side of things. We don't have a replacement at this point for Giuntoli, but let's start there. So Giuntoli's out, and we'll read you the official club statement on Giuntoli. Juventus and Cristiano Giuntoli announced that they have mutually agreed to the termination of his employment contract. The decision was based on a joint assessment of future perspectives and mutual priorities. So right there, very short, not much substance to it. No thank yous, as I know some other platforms have talked about in the past. It was kind of a colder one. What are your thoughts on this statement right here?
Yeah, going back to your point, kind of a cold statement, and nothing much more to add to this. It seemed like the relationship was done. It was over. And especially with the Mota hire and the fire of the mid-season firing of Mota as well, and then scrambling to get a caretaker essentially to come in, and the relationship in the locker room as well, the divide it was just such a depressing and cloud over this Juventus team, and we didn't even know as fans what was going to happen. We were worried that Champions League was going to be missed, and if they were to make top four, Giuntoli would have a chance to even stay. But obviously, they all say those things. If this happens, they'll stay. But never really ever happens, does it? Right?
No. I'll say this: with Giuntoli, when he came in, there was excitement. I think there was excitement from both of us. Somebody who grew up a Juventus fan, somebody who wanted to come to the club, and someone who had some, real. I don't know what the word is without saying expletives, but he had the coglioni, he seemed to have that swagger to him. I think that's the best word that I could use, swagger. But it just didn't translate. Sometimes it was stubborn for being stubborn, and ultimately his biggest demise was going all in on Thiago Motta, and that failed. And he went so hard at that he blew the trust of Allegri. We had the Coppa Italia dust up. Everyone saw what happened, and then he fired Allegri right after that. But Allegri showed, hey, I've done so much for this club, and all that's been going on behind the scenes is you're basically kicking me out without telling the world you're kicking me out. You're saying one thing but doing another behind the scenes, but it's all out in the media. And as a manager who's brought success, I deserve better than that. And the fans love him too. You can say what you want about the way Allegri ball is, but at the end of the day, he won. And that's the most important. That's at the core of Juventus DNA. And to do that to somebody, you better have the right guy in place. And he didn't. And so this is much deserved. We can talk about the transfers, which were horrible in themselves, but he just kind of got stubborn in his ways. And it was, part of my worry was, and we had talked about this, does Champions League save him? Thankfully, it didn't. And thankfully, a new path is now forged. Again, I don't know if that path is going to be the right one, but I think we saw enough to know the last path was not it.
Yeah, but change was needed, right? And we all knew change was needed. Mota, him staying, I think we would have missed Champions League, John. I'll be honest. Like those back-to-back losses at home, not at home, sorry. One being at home, the big one against Atalanta, and then obviously Fiore. That was the nail in the coffin, right? You saw just the morale and the disconnect.
He lost the club. He lost the club. He lost the players.
Yeah, it's just 11 individuals playing a kickabout. Just walk to the park and let's play. But I wanted to touch back on Giuntoli here with his transfers, man. He went all in on some of these players, and he lost on these transfers. Like, he got literally haggled by Bologna for Calafiore, and he ended up going to Arsenal anyway. Arsenal's like, yeah, sure, we'll pay for it, right? And then the Coop Miners, right? I mean, that was a whole debacle in itself. The guy didn't even come fit to training camp because he wasn't training with Atalanta. He was training by himself, and we all know training alone is not the same as training or getting preseason matches in, right? So stuff like that in the Douglas Luiz one as well. Like, and I don't want to rag on Douglas Luiz here. He had a bad season, not playing as much with injuries. But
that's a nice way of saying it. But
I don't want to disrespect the guy here, right? And we're all human at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if it's about disrespecting the guy. I think ultimately the player at West Ham was really good. And so, that's where everything came from. Yeah. That's where you based your signing off of. Right. And so I kind of understood the signing at the time, but obviously it turned out to be a massive miss.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, and the only good signing that Giuntoli brought in was Thuram. Kefren Thuram was our best midfielder, probably our best player, other than maybe Lucatelli, I would say. Who else would you say consistently? Yildiz, Koulibaly had a good half of the season. He kind of dipped a little bit after the first few games. Chico dipped a little bit, but I mean, he didn't really do much. And then don't get into the sales, man, because the sales and he penny on the dollar he sold these guys for, and they're flourishing at their other teams here.
Sorry, I was just confirming with my. It was Aston Villa, not West Ham.
Sorry.
I realized I said West Ham after, and I thought I saw you look at me, and I was like, did I say? But
I wanted to correct you, but I was like, I could be wrong because I don't watch much Prem.
I know you don't, and I should know better because I actually do.
Yeah, but I don't blame you too because the colors are very similar, right? Like they have that like maroon burgundy color, right?
It's a rookie mistake.
But I don't blame you, John, and let's apologize to the fans because they might torch you for it.
That's it, and deserved. But I think we'll close off this loop because I think the Malta stuff's been discussed. It's a bit of old news now, and Giuntoli out. We're kind of forging a new path, but we had also talked about this. The start of Malta ball seemed to be interesting, seemed to be creative. We were blowing teams out. We had some excitement to it. Where it started to crumble was Bremner's injury, and then Malta just lost the room. Yeah. And whether it was he felt the pressure, and because of the pressure, he tried to change who he was, who his tactics were, who he was at his core, or Bremner was holding the club together because he's a true leader, and him going down really lost that leadership in the room, and it wasn't able to suffice. Regardless, that's a lack of leadership on the manager, and he should have to pay for the inefficiencies at the club there. And that's what he ended up doing. And he cost Giuntoli his job as well.
Yeah, let's start with this. I mean, going back to the leadership, the lack of leadership in that change room, right? You're rotating the armed men. We're not used to that. We don't do that here, right? You have one captain and one captain only. If you're going to rotate it, do that somewhere else, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But pick a captain. Gatti was a surprise for me, and I think he did pretty good as a captain there. Personally, for me, no disrespect to Lucatelli because I think he's stepped up now. Second half of the season since Tudor has come in, I feel like we're seeing the best version of Lucatelli. But I would say I would have picked Bremer myself. Like you said, the taper off, the peak. They peaked in October. I said this yesterday.
We're saying what's the best moment of the season, and
it was the Leipzig.
Yeah,
it was the comeback, right? But it was after he went down as well, Bremer. The feeling, the formation, the style of play they played more of a defensive style. They weren't more high up because Bremer could track back and cover for Gatti and Cambiasso, right? So it's unfortunate. Like I said, we could talk about this one all day here.
Yeah. And now players have even come out against, indirectly or some directly, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
saw comments from Chiesa, which I'll pull up here as well. Sorry, that's the wrong one here, but I'll add this one to. So this one here from Forza Juventus, Chiesa talking to the Gazette. Motta told me that I was not part of his plans and should just go find another team. So clearly he was upset. We also had Rabiot. Rabiot came out and talked about his, he had plans with Allegri, but, Giuntoli kind of scrapped all that. Motta didn't want him. He wanted to kind of come back to Juve, but it just wasn't there. So again, I think that speaks to what we were saying with Giuntoli, with Motta just losing the room, being maybe a little too stubborn, and it cost them both. But
yeah, I feel like Motta's ego got in the way a little bit. But speaking of egos, I wanted to touch up on Chiesa as well, right? Because I think that's a huge loss, and
yeah,
he's rumored. We'll get into more rumors later of transfers, but he's rumored apparently he has a verbal agreement, not a most reliable source, that he's going to Milan, and it kind of just shows you that these players did have a good relationship with Allegri, right? And what you see on the pitch, yeah, they're arguing, but I mean, a player and a coach is not supposed to be the best of friends, right? I mean, Comoli said it the best, going back to him. I don't care if you're not friends outside of the workplace, but if you are friend, like if all I care is that you play together and you play well, right?
Yeah.
So Chiesa and Allegri, yes, maybe on the surface didn't get along well. That's what we saw. But they saw eye to eye on something and they had an understanding as well. And I'm sure Chiesa did have a bit of an ego in this situation, but you can clearly tell with, Giuntoli, the way he talks to the media, and Motta, the way, he was with Vlahovic, Cambiaso, and so on. There was a bit of ego on their side as well.
Yeah. And that goes into the next part, which is who is going to be his replacement. So we've had rumors. The rumors have been flying. Who's going to be the new sporting director? The three main ones we had, and we'll go through them. Hasan Salihamidzic, former Juve player. He worked also with Bayern Munich. Matteo Tozzoni, who was also part of our organization as well.
Yeah, he was a scout. He actually the one that plucked out a little gem, Yildiz there.
Yeah, so he was known for that. Another big name, though, and then Ricky Masera. Now, Matteo, there were heavy rumors about him coming back. It seems Fab's been reporting that it looks like he's going to Arsenal. So that's somebody we can cross off the list.
Right.
In his place, I do believe there were some rumors, and I don't have the name, but one of the directors of scouting or something with Toulouse is also rumored, obviously with Comoli, the relationship there. Yes. But I haven't heard too many on that. So if there is something a little more concrete there, we'll obviously go there. But obviously we have the other two names, which are Hassan and Ricky. Maybe you want to touch on what your thoughts are. Where do you think the direction should go with this team?
Well, for me personally, I would love to bring in Hassan, just more the Juve blood, the Juve DNA, and the job that he also has done did at Bayern. For me, I think it's going to be Ricky Masara, and he came from Milan, and I know he has brought in a few names at Milan, like Leao. Who else has he brought in, John?
Yeah, I think there were a few other names there. There were some bigger ones. I mean, you look at what Milan's done. They've been positive. Tonali, I think, was one of the big ones. I believe it was under Masada as well. But yeah, Milan's had some good players. Their issue's been more selling the players. But, again, I think all of these are somewhat underwhelming. Hassan, his time at Bayern too was, I think it started in 2018. There were Bayern's obviously is still a great club, but they went in on Julian Nagelsmann. That one was a bit of a tough one there. They spent a lot to bring him in. Didn't necessarily work with the culture at Bayern, but he's proving to still be a great manager as well. So maybe there was some foresight there. But yeah, Ricky kind of seems like he's in pole position here. So I don't have a feeling, I guess, either way of where I'd like to go. I think Hassan just playing for the black and white, having put that crest on. I think that means a lot. So I think I'm more interested there. But we'll have to kind of see how that unfolds.
Yeah, you don't want to, have prejudgment here, right? You want to give everyone a chance, right? And like you said, it's not the sexiest of names to come and do the job here, but we got to give them a chance and see what they do.
Yeah. Now everything kind of works top down, right? So we've kind of talked about management. I think now it's important to get into the coaching, specifically the coaching carousel that's been Serie A, but specific to Juventus as well. Rumors are flying. Meetings have happened. Comoli, Chiellini have had talks with Tudor. Sounds like he will stay on for the season. Now, was that their choice, right? Conte obviously staying with Napoli. Gasperini, there was talks of maybe a meeting. Was something happening? Was something not? He ends up sticking with his original plan to go to Roma. I guess first, let's go to Tudor. How do we feel about how last season ended? Him getting us into Champions League, obviously big, but I think all Juventini would be lying if they said they wanted him to come back. I think they were appreciative for what he had done, but they probably got enamored with the Conte rumors.
Yeah, I myself, I was messaging you videos. I'm like, look at Conte here. He just looks so disinterested after their big win.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to Tudor and the last game of the season, barely making it off of a penalty kick from Locatelli. Being in Tudor's shoes here now, I think the Juve board, they need to give him some like a vote of confidence here. Like give him some reassurance, give him some players to, for the season, and if they're going to really stick with him. And I think honestly, John, I don't think they have a choice here.
No.
The options that are left, Pioli, Marco Silva, Mancini, like those names, I'm not gonna turn my head twice to. At this point, I would rather stick with Tudor, give him the FIFA Club World Cup, right? That's pretty much their preseason. There's no point bringing in another coach after the FIFA Club World Cup and to try to reinstill a new tactic, a new idea to these guys. Just stick with them, see how it goes. Yeah. Do you give them till Christmas or do you give them the whole year? Like I genuinely don't know at this point.
Yeah. I think this is now the right decision. I think if you had the opportunity to get Conte back, I think it's just too appealing. Everywhere he goes, he pretty much wins. He has the DNA of Juventus. There were so many positive things, and he's known to build a culture. And that's what we're truly lacking. So I think that was definitely the one if you're going to do it. Now it feels like you're kind of grasping. It feels like you're trying to put out you're trying to reach on coaches, managers. Give Tudor the year. If he excels, then you might have somebody on your hands. Maybe you have somebody who just figures it out. I think if you go another option like a Marco Silva, again, not sexy names, but if you're going with one of them, you're really now it's like it's their vision. And you owe it to them to have another maybe year, 2, 3 potentially to really see out their vision, unless they do as poorly as Mota did. But that's why you have to do that. Why rush into something like that? Tudor cares about the club. He cares about the players. He cares about the fans. You saw that passion when he was managing, and he got you into Champions League. I think you just give him that chance. You let him play out the year, and again, if it works, then great. If not, you can pivot afterwards. You may have a bunch of other opportunities to see other managers come in that are available, and that may be aligned with what you want. But you also just got in the seat here. So, we were talking about Gasperini. We mentioned his name. He already has an agreement with Roma to really change everything that's going on there. It would have taken a lot. And Comoli's just getting settled in. He's barely sitting down. Chiellini's barely sitting down. So you're losing all these guys. Why rush into it? You have a guy who's there, who's had moderate success. I don't think that we were blown away with what we saw, but he got us back into Champions League, which is super important. And again, the players seem to care for him, the fans, he has that relationship. So ride it out with him. I think going somewhere else right now, given the options available, is just maybe taking a step back.
Yeah, and I mean, to even add to that too, right? You got to give him the players that he probably needs and wants that will work in his system, right? You got to actually, if you're going to stick with him, you got to invest in him. It can't be this constant switch in coaches, Allegri, Sarri, Pirlo, Allegri, Motta. Like, it's just, listen, after the first time Juve and Allegri split up, that's when they kind of should have just made a shift. But I also understand why they didn't do it. Why? Big name Ronaldo. You can't change things on the fly. You got to win now with a name like Ronaldo at the club. So I understand they're stuck in a position, but look where they are now. Fans are frustrated. Fans are pissed. They're not used to this. They want to get back to winning ways. And it's just like this retooling that they've been doing on the fly here, right? Even going back to Giuntoli, just selling and then just buying big. He spent what, 200 million in one season or one summer, sorry. And look where we're at now. We're scrambling to get a coach because it's not official, right? We're scrambling to get a sporting director, and next week is the FIFA Club World Cup. Yeah. How is this not a distraction for these guys? Right? You're going into a season and we're already like, running around with our heads cut off. That's my rant.
And that, but you know what? And it makes a lot of sense, but management now has seemed to have calmed things down. We had the reports of Elkin and Comoli and Chiellini again talking with Tudor. And he was obviously upset at the end of the season, right? He said, hey, we'll see about the Club World Cup. And Giuntoli said, no, he's going to be there for the World Cup. And his agent just came out and said he was just frustrated. But why is he frustrated? Because you're just talking about courting all these other managers in the media in front of him. He's sitting there trying to do a job. He's fighting his ass off to be a part of it. It's a big one. So Tudor, now things have settled, it seems. We're giving him the opportunity. Let's see how the Club World Cup plays out, which we won't get into too much here because we are going to have a preview show on it. We'll talk about how we feel about Juve. But Tudor stays, and that's basically what we're going to be looking for next year. Looking towards next year. Now, a couple other names that were somewhat interesting. Deschamps came out with a statement because a couple people were asking him about it, which we'll also pull up here. But so this was from, again, Juventus FC, so juventusfc.com. Didier Deschamps on Juve. Juventus is an important club. A return, I haven't decided anything. After I leave the French national team, in parentheses, right? But everything is possible. I went back to a difficult situation and left in 2007 because it seemed like the right choice. However, no, it wasn't the correct choice. Now Igor Tudor is there. I talked to him often before he signed. So there sounds like there's some interest. Sounds like there could potentially be a reunion. He's done well with the French national team. I know there's also been some not so positive about performance there as well. And they do have a loaded squad, so you're not ever sure what's what there. But this could be something to look for in the future too. How long has he got with the national team? He's there probably since they're going through qualifying. He's going to be there for 2026. But then after that, what's going to be made of him? Is that somebody that could potentially interest you? Or do we talk about the other one in Zinedine Zidane? Is that somebody who would come back to Juventus? Is that somebody that could appeal? But I'll let you kind of answer those two. We'll start with Deschamps, and then you can kind of go into Zidane.
For me, I think Deschamps, he would come in after the World Cup, right? And they're going through qualifying, like you just mentioned. I feel like Zidane is waiting on that French national team job. He hasn't really taken anything since Madrid, right? You haven't heard much of his name. You hear every now and then. You hear fans wanting him to come in. I do think Zidane is waiting for that. If he doesn't get it, and then it might be Zidane in, right, at Juve, or who knows, vice versa. Deschamps comes in after World Cup. and it doesn't turn out too well, or he takes the team as far as he can in that tournament, because he's been there for a while, right? He's won. They've done very well, but sometimes you just need a different voice in the change room, as with all sports. Life cycles come to an end. So yeah, nothing much more to add on that one, I would say, from my point of view here.
Yeah, and I think that was more just to get people to see what could be potential future hirings past Tudor. But again, we said Tudor staying. That's definitely the direction that Juventus seems to be going. Maybe horrible Club World Cup could change that. I don't see it, but Tudor will stay. But those are, potentially some options to look for in the future. Going off of that, let's go into some player news now, which we'll start off with the first signing, which was Kalulu option exercised, about $15 million. I think this was a no-brainer. Came in, played really well, versatile.
Was healthy.
I think was healthy. Yeah,
played a lot.
Effort. Played a lot. So that was one of the big points, and that was again no-brainer. I don't know why Milan made the move they did there, but do you have any other comments on Kalulu? Again, it seems like a pretty slam dunk decision.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was going to happen. I think like the first 5 matches into the season, right? And we were all loving it. He reminded us of our old number 15 that we had in Barzagli, just running down the pitch with the ball. I like Kalulu. It was a good choice. He's a good option as well. He brings a lot of versatility and ball movement from the back end, which we don't really have that much. So no, that was great. I mean, I know he didn't have such a great time at Milan there, but it also as well. And Milan's kind of been in this weird limbo as of late too. So,
and some other housekeeping. We're also looking at some of the other loanees. Sounds like Koulibaly is going to be given permission to stay for the Club World Cup. There'll be some discussions about if some arrangement can be agreed upon. I'm a little hesitant to believe there will be, but at least the fact that he's staying for the Club World Cup gives them that option up front, as well as gives more time to discuss a potential transfer. Renato Vega, he's out the door. He's officially back with Chelsea. So that's one. That's a tougher one, I think, to swallow. We saw some good glimpses. He did have some health concerns there, but I think when he played, we saw some real improvements in the back end. So that's a tougher loss. And then Sergio Conceição, Chico, obviously, what do we got to say about him? There is the $40 million option.
To 30.
Well, I thought they're trying to negotiate it down to 30.
I believe it was a 10 loan, and then the 30 was an option to buy.
Okay.
So 40. So, you're right. 40 then. 40. Yeah.
So that's the other one there. What are they going to do? Do they want to pay the fee? I know there's been talks about negotiating it down. That was more of a Giuntoli call on Conceição. He was going to be the one he was the one who made the loan. He was the one who was also going to be involved in the purchase of it. There was a lot of rumors during the year that was already like a handshake deal in the back. Now with things changing, it could change that future. He scored a banger of a goal in Nations League just yesterday.
Yeah, beautiful goal.
Yeah. Would you like to see him back, I guess would be the question there.
First I want to start off with Koulibaly. I think I know Kulu came out and said, or he did mention, I don't know if it's quote for quote, I did see it on X, that he is pushing to stay for another year. And I know Juve would want to keep him for another year on loan. That would be great. I think he brings that technicality that we don't have, that skill that we don't have up front. And when he was good, he was our best striker all year. I mean, Vlahovic, unfortunately, just Vlahovic wasn't doing it. Vega, loved him, wish he stayed, but I know Chelsea, their price to pay for him is too high and too rich for Juve, and I don't think they're willing to extend the loan either. Now that being said, with Chico, Honestly, I know it's a gamble, especially with his age and what he could develop into. I mean, we had some worries with, wingers that were young and we paid a high price, Bernadeschi, right? So we kind of don't know what he will develop into and what he can turn into. I like the player a lot. He started off really well this year. It looks like he was Mota's guy when healthy. And I mean, he wasn't really at the beginning because Gonzalez was playing there. But Chico, when he was on, he was very, very good. And then Tudor came in. He was kind of a bit of a sub. I know he was coming back from an injury. But you have to give him that freedom role as well. And I don't know if Tudor wants to give him that freedom role because it's more on Yıldız's side. That's what it looks like. But I like I said, I would like to see Chico back. For the price of 30 mil, maybe, but I would like to see him.
Unless you can redistribute that somewhere else. And obviously I am talking about Chico, not his father, Sergio, which I realized I said that. That's two on me. That's two strikes. He's somebody, I think the talent's there. I don't know how he fits here. I don't know that we have the resources to spend like crazy. So I'm a little concerned about paying that bill, but the talent's there. And in a team that I think lacked a lot of it this year, it's maybe something that you need to explore the return. If you can negotiate it down, I think it's definitely something you want to do. 40 is a little rich for me. Adding the extra 30, it's a little rich for me, and I don't know if I would necessarily do it. But there's no doubt that the player has skill. And as far as the other ones, Koulibaly, I think there could be some interest in keeping him here. Again, he also had ups and downs, but how much of that is system? How much of that was the player profile himself? Now, we're going to go into a rumor in a second here, and that may tie into how we think about Koulibaly, so maybe I'll put that to the side. But for Vega, sad to see him go. It's unfortunate it won't work, but with Bremner coming back too, and maybe some other rumors that we'll talk about as well, potentially coming to fruition, maybe there will be some reinforcements for the center back position that could assist with filling that gap.
Yeah, which we need, because right now we got Dele Rugani coming back.
Well, so does the national team, but we'll get on that as well.
Exactly,
we'll talk a little bit about the national team as well. So let's get to the rumors. The first one will go to Jonathan David. He has been heavily linked with Serie A as soon as it was announced that he would not be re-upping with Lille. Being from Toronto, both of us, Canadian, we watch a lot of the Canadian national team. We see Jonathan David. He's really found his stride for the national team. He's had it with Lille for a while, but he's found it with the national team. Player profile, it's exciting. I would love to see a Canadian playing for the squad, for the black and white. However, there's been talks of how much that wage could be. Because it's on a free, the salary typically goes a bit higher.
Right.
And originally Napoli was kind of in pole position. The reports now are that since Conte has re-upped, Jonathan David is on the back burner. I don't think he sees a fit, doesn't see it as necessary the same way maybe ADL did, as he obviously loves Lukaku and he wants to spend the money elsewhere. So the rumors now are Juventus is in the lead, but it is a heavy price to pay. What are your initial thoughts on Jonathan David and the price points?
I think he'd be great, especially if you're bringing Kulu, right? And I mentioned this the other day to you. You have one technically gifted player and you have one big-bodied, strong striker. Now, that being said,
just interrupt you quickly. I've got it up here. Here's the tweet. So Vecchio Signora, they posted what the comments are about this, and it looks like 20 to 25 million in agent fees, and then an additional 6 to 7 million per year contract. The comment here is, if he fails, no club will match those wages. We'll be stuck with him. No, thank you. Whatever you want to make of that, you can, but I'll kind of let you continue your train of thought here.
No, I agree with Khaled there, right? You don't want to get caught paying those high fees. It's almost a transfer fee. I mean, I know it's not what Jonathan David is worth, right? Because he would go for much higher, right? But that's 20 to 25 million fee to the agent is too rich for my blood, man. I mean, we kind of got caught in that as well when we were signing. I'm not comparing Jonathan David to these kinds of players, but we got caught with Ramsey, right? Paying a high fee to his agent. Rabiot paying a high fee agent fee to his mother, and then Matuidi at the end of the day, right? And look what all happened, right? Rabiot walked away, didn't even sell him. What we got peanuts, or we bought out Ramsey, and then Matuidi, same thing, right? So Khaled's right. We're gonna get stuck with that.
Now with Jonathan David, I think the profile could fit Serie A very well. Very physical. He's still very young. I don't like the price either. I think the price is just way too high. When I looked at it as a whole, as much as I wanted to see the Canadian playing for the black and white, I also just didn't think it would be a fit originally. That was my original thought. I think I kind of stick with that. But, we talked about as well, if Kulumwani stays, there was rumors of how Tudor would want to utilize that two-striker system with Kulumwani and David. And I think that could really work off each other. Yeah. But again, how much are we paying? You cannot spend that much on the player that will end up messing up with the wage bill as far as other signings are concerned, how much you're putting into this. But the one leg up I think we do have is that Comoli came from the French league. If there's anyone who's watched him enough, it's probably him. Right. So you'll really see if he really rates the player, you're going to see a heavy attempt to bring him in.
Absolutely.
If he doesn't, then you may have an understanding that he doesn't rate him that highly.
Yeah, right. And I mean, in going back to Kulumwani and being the technically gifted player, and how Jonathan David is well suited for Serie A because of his build. Kind of compare him to Lukaku, right? Not 1-1, right? Totally different players still at the end of the day. But that being said, the other big body player that that Juve has, he's a Juventus player, is Vlahovic. Now, do they keep Vlahovic? That's my question. Does Tudor try to reignite him, or are we done with Vlahovic here? Because transfer window is coming in, and we're not hearing really much of.
It is very quiet on that front. Very quiet.
It is. Now, I mean, we don't have a sporting director yet officially, but all I keep seeing is that they were trying to extend his contract to make the yearly amount like amortized over like a small, so it would be the same but smaller. And there's even talks of him reducing his salary, and and Vlahovic and his agent said no thank you. Yeah. So I know there were two conversations like that. Yeah, I mean, like I said, what are your thoughts on that? Right? Do we stick with Vlahovic?
Yeah, I think the writing's on the wall for Vlahovic. I think it's a marriage that's meant to just end. We've been two of the biggest supporters of Vlahovic. We've wanted this to work more than I think anybody. Yeah. I've seen the repeat, and it just hasn't worked. And it didn't work under Tudor either. So now Vlahovic was injured a bit too. So I'll give him a bit of that. But ultimately, I think it's best for all parties if he does move on. Doesn't sound like he'll resign. And what are you keeping him here for? It doesn't mean he won't go somewhere else and figure it out. Or
I hope he does. I really like the player. I don't know, kind of feel bad for him.
I thought he came in with the right attitude. I thought he cared about the badge. I thought he cared about the team. It just never seemed to work out. I mean, it started again. It was this incredible start, scoring the big goal. It really just, okay, here we go. And it just never took off. Too inconsistent. Right. A lot of open misses. It just never worked out.
Yeah. And not a lot of service either. Let's be honest. Not a lot of service from the midfield.
No, and that could be part of the problem too, right? And that would be the other argument. But I think you got to move on and move on from a lot more of that old guard. It's hard saying old because he's still so young. He's still pretty young, but it is part of the old past of what was brought in before that hasn't worked. So I think you identify a couple players, Yildiz, Locatelli, that you keep, and then the rest you got to try to move off of and bring in that next wave. And hopefully that provides success.
Yeah.
Now, bringing in those new players, that's going to be a tough decision to be made. We've heard rumors going around now, so we'll touch on a couple of the rumors. Sancho rumors, that's died down the last few days. Anthony, so these are the Man United links, right? Man United is trying to get their wage bill down so that they've had a couple big signings there, Cunha and Bueno. They need to bring out some players as well. They've talked about Garnacho, and that's kind of where the Man United links are coming from. So Sancho was obviously there. It was a big one last year. Looked like it was almost going to get done until Chelsea came in. Now, Chelsea also paid $5 million to not keep the player because they had the option to buy, or if they backed out of the option, they'd have to pay $5 million just straight to United. They chose to do that instead of keeping the player. So obviously, unless he's at Borussia Dortmund, it doesn't sound like Sancho's going to play well. And it feels like an old sign, like that feels like a Giuntoli signing. So not really loving that. With Anthony found it a real Betis. They went to the Europa League final, lost to Chelsea. He seemed to find it afterwards. I don't know. He was such a dud at United, but a lot of guys that were actually end up doing okay afterwards. So I don't know that I watch enough of him, but I know there was a bit of an ego there. And I know with these United players as well, they're paid so much that to bring them in, you got to get close to that wage bill. And are we starting to see that same thing like with Jonathan David?
Yeah. I want to start with Sancho here. Sancho was a Giuntoli signing there. Both players were, it seemed like. Now their names have kicked up off the ground. I was like, oh, yeah. When I saw it on X, I was like, this sounds like October or January all over again, where we're looking at bringing these guys in. For me personally, I think both players would do well in the league. But in sense of with baggage, for me, the player I would bring in would be Sancho, just because of baggage reasons. And I know there was a recent uproar recently with another player that we wanted to bring in, Mason Greenwood, kind of the similar baggage that Anthony has. And I know a lot of fans did not want that, did not like that. Yeah. And a lot of people on X engaged about it and spoke about it. So that being said,
the Greenwood one, a little more baggage than maybe the other guys.
Right. But that's not something I don't think we need. Another ego. I don't think. I mean, all these players have egos at the end of the day, but you don't want you want someone who plays for the team here. You don't want someone that plays for the name, and I don't care about the name. Just play for the team.
The other United name, Højlund, obviously, that's another one. He's been horrible. As I said, I watch a bit more Premier League than you do. I listen to a lot of podcasts on Premier League. United fans do not like the player. It's pretty obvious. They don't think he's worth much. So it's a little concerning there. But again, there is this, take it with a grain of salt, because it is United and because players have had success once they leave. Now, latest reports are saying Inter's ahead on that one. But again, I think if you bring in a Jonathan David or you keep Colomani and you bring in a different striker, there's no need for that. So having said all of that, I think we're going to start to see the true direction of the club in a little bit here. Once we get the new sporting director in, once Comoli and Chiellini actually sit down, get in. So I think some of these rumors are a bit premature. So that's why I'm a little hesitant talking about them. I think it's maybe trying to drive up some interest, maybe from United side. But, there's something to keep an eye on because there was a bit of smoke to these last summer, especially in the Sancho case. So just something to keep an eye on and look at. The other one is Giovanni Leone from Parma, young Italian center back. Talk about this one is that Juventus, apparently, according to reports, Elkan, the whole ownership on down, want to fill the club with more Italians, especially younger Italians. Build up that, what Juventus was known for in the past, right? Having those young Italian internationals. So this is one that I would be all over. This sounds like a prototype of, this is the type of risk I think you'd want to take. And now Milan's also been rumored to be involved in it, but maybe you can give your opinion on it. What do you think of this possible signing?
I love it, but it also pisses me off because we had these young Italian players and we sold them out, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about Rovella, Fagioli, Keane, right?
Mhm.
Just to name a few, and to add another is he went to Bournemouth. Husai, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Right. I'm not Italian, but still young talent
Yeah.
that came up through our rankings and from next gen.
Yeah.
So hearing this, I love it. It's great. I think we do need more of young Italian players playing at bigger clubs like Inter, Milan, Juve, Napoli, and so forth.
Mhm.
But again, at the same time, it does piss me off a little bit because we had this idea in place already, and we sold it all away.
Yeah. But that was part of Agnelli's talk, right? Agnelli's talk
Exactly.
before he was ousted was wanting to build this next gen group, starting that core from young. He was talking at conferences about it. He was talking about building that core of young players. And as soon as everything happened with Agnelli and he was out, Nedved was out, Giuntoli came in, Giuntoli just let them all go.
Yeah,
Sold
almost
them
just
all.
kind of just erased everything, right? Undid
Yeah.
all the not the goodwill, all the work.
Yeah. So anyway, on the transfer talk, as we said, let's give management some time to settle in.
Exactly. Yeah.
I believe they're going to evaluate truly everything after the Club World Cup. So I think that's when you're going to start to see the real rumors flying, the real direction of where this club wants to take where they want to take the club, in which direction. So that's going to be the real part of it. But we'll be here along the way. Our podcast will talk about that, we'll bring up any news that we think is relevant, and we'll continue to go down that path. But in the talk of Agnelli, and in the talk of Agnelli moving aside, and in the talk of Elkin being in the front seat here, we've also had this CEO here from Tether who's had some shares here in the club, but obviously wants a bit more involvement. So we do have a statement. I don't know if you want to read it or I can read it, but we'll pull up the statement here so at least everybody can see it. And this is straight from Paolo Ardonio. Is that how you say it?
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah. Did you want me to read the statement?
Yeah, sure. So this is
Okay.
straight from his Twitter account. He posted this. This is translated to English for the English audience here. But yeah, Dom, if you want to read it, and we can kind of go into what we think about this.
All right. So we got, since Tether announced its investment in Juventus, and especially in the last few days following the growing frustrations of the fans and the current state of the team, many of you have asked when Tether, will raise the grain to support Juventus, buy new players, etc. Tether looks forward to being part of the team's growth and future, but to date, the company has not allowed Tether to participate in capital increases announced a month ago, around 15 to 110 million. We simply cannot contribute unless society allows us to. It truly is a shame to leave aside willing members who could invest in significantly to help the great Juventus again. I hope that at least the money from my grandstand ticket can help support the management's expenses, make Juventus great again.
So he's clearly trying to make a move for the team. Clearly wants to invest. Now, while it is an interesting proposition given the money and maybe the backing that could be had here, there's something about Juventus still being owned, by the ownership that's there and being still very Italian. But aligning yourself also with the, the Make America Great Again, with the Make Juventus Great Again. Don't know if that's the best sales pitch, especially for Italian fans. But this is someone who's been making a lot of noise, making a lot of noise on social media. He's been doing interviews. Obviously, wants to have some more control and wants to invest, but it seems like everyone else is very quiet, and they're maybe trying to just ignore him for now.
Yeah, it does seem like that, doesn't it? It just, I know fans are frustrated and clamoring for change and invest, but I mean, I don't know too much about this kind of stuff, and I'm not going to pretend I do. But if I were in this position, I wouldn't bring this guy on board. It's just based off of what goodwill and good intentions that he wants to make Juve great again. You have teams who spend carelessly and they're battling in relegation, right? And then you're tied to those contracts. I don't want to just come in and spend that kind of money and just buy big name players and then it just doesn't work out. It's just carelessness at this point, right? And again, he's just trying to make some noise and get some fans on his side, but it just sounds like that, like you just said, it sounds like management and Juventus are trying to just hush and go away type thing.
Yeah, I think he's trying to get in slowly so that he can get his poison within and then take over, right? I think that's his ultimate goal, is to get in slowly and then build from there. And they're basically pushing him off to the side because they don't want that, right? They want the full control, and I think they can see what he's trying to do, what he represents. I don't believe going public with this kind of stuff really helps him. I think it only probably pisses them off a bit more. But we'll see. But it's something to keep an eye on because he is somebody with heavy influence. He is someone with a lot of money. If the team continues to go down a path where success on the field is not had, is this a real option that the fans may turn to? And maybe that's where his public outbursts, where his public statements actually do matter, because there may be that, hey, this is a lifeline. Let's grab a hold of it. Let's get back to being Juventus again. So it's going to be very important that Elkin gets these decisions right and that Juventus starts to see success again, or they could have a problem on their hands with a very big PR nightmare.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but it also just looks like right now, and I'm sure we'll make our predictions down the line when the season kicks off, right? But
yeah,
we'll have to see where Juventus finishes, right? I don't, going into this season for me, my expectations, I don't want to be a pessimist. I'm just trying to be an optimist or a realist. My expectations this year, I don't know. They're not too high because there are concerns.
There's still so much. There's still so much. Yeah, and I think we'd have to agree because nobody's been brought in. Tudor's staying. We're expecting a lot of the same. An argument can be made that maybe Inter will take a step back. We'll talk about the news there. So maybe those could be some by proxy of people maybe falling down a little bit. You stay up. But we have to see how this season unfolds. And I truly don't believe anything's really going to happen till not an investment, but an evaluation is made of the Club World Cup.
Right.
So that's going to be the biggest moment. This Club World Cup, and I've said this to you offline before, and we'll talk about it in the preview, you could almost make an argument that this is the most important tournament for Juventus out of anybody in there. There's other clubs that are smaller, not in the big leagues, that this is a big platform for them, but really determining the outcome of the future of what's going to happen could really, for Juventus at least, could really depend on what happens at that tournament.
Yeah, especially for some of these players, right, who we have in Conceição and in Koulibaly. Are they staying? Rugani, are they staying? Kostic, is he staying? Right? not to scare you there, John.
Yeah.
But you're right. I agree, right? And you also want to go in the season with good morale and feeling good and being in form as well. So yeah, I don't disagree with you on that one.
Yeah, well, so that will take us into now. We'll go into a bit of the general news around the league. So obviously, we have Allegri being announced as the manager at Milan. Tough one, a bit to swallow. We're both pretty big Allegri fans. I think yourself a lot more than I was. You're a big believer in Allegri, but I think we got a little tired of the tactics, let's say, but maybe he was right given how the team performed. But that's a quick one there. Gasperini, obviously, to Roma, which we discussed a little bit. Fiorentina looks to be bringing back Pioli. That seems to be almost across the finish line.
Yeah. Lazio with Sarri.
Lazio bringing back Sarri.
Lazio with Sarri. Lazio with Sarri.
So the coaching carousel has really been crazy. And that leads us to the bigger news, which is officially Simeone Inzaghi. Maybe for strike three, I would have said Filippo, but no, I'm staying. I said the right name this time. Simeone Inzaghi decides to leave Inter to go to Al Hilal. Basically, 2-year contract, $26 million a year. Those are, life-changing money. But that leaves Inter, who obviously one of the top teams in the league, and now they did go trophyless, which is very nice to see. But now they're left holding a situation. Now they're left holding a situation where they have no manager, and as we talked about with Juventus, kind of slim pickings out there, which leads to the two big rumors, which were Cesc Fabregas. Cesc Fabregas has not come out with an official statement, but Como's come out with a statement saying he's basically not going anywhere. We've told him that he's aligned with us. He's not going anywhere. And then
I think that's a smart move too for Fabregas as well. I like him at Como. I think we'll see Como do well again the next year as well.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the other rumor, which is Chivu, who's going to be potentially going there from Parma. Sorry.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Now he's had obviously some history. He's played for the club, but this could be, and that's what I was kind of alluding to before, of some of the teams maybe having to take a step back here.
Yeah.
Could this be a possibility? Even Gasperini going to Roma doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be better. Claudio Ranieri had that team playing incredibly well. Now, I would say I'm more intrigued by that one. I think Gasperini, can be a good manager under Roma, but it doesn't guarantee. So that's a team to watch out for. Again, Inter losing this. Sarri back at Lazio could be fireworks. I mean, that didn't end very well. So
Moto and Atalanta?
Potentially Moto Atalanta. Yeah.
I mean,
so interesting.
I wouldn't be surprised if Inter, sorry to cut you off there, John. I wouldn't be surprised if Inter would go in for Motta. I don't know. Yeah. I have a weird feeling in being there as a player, some similar ties. He did do well at Bologna, but he also did lose the locker room at Juve. Maybe he learns from his lessons and he gets a second crack at it and does well. And I mean, I would be upset to see that because it's like, why couldn't you do that here?
Yeah.
But anyways, so possibilities.
Yeah. So those are big things to look out for. Those are some of the big news. If there are any other big signings in Serie A, we'll obviously talk about it. We'll have a general, but this will be more focused on Juventus. The other note to really make of is there are reports coming out about a scandal with Inter, involving moving money around, some other items. There's still information being gathered on it. There hasn't, from my understanding to this point, been an official investigation on it.
No.
Could that be that, it's maybe that's a little shady. Maybe that's just we're putting our tinfoil hats on. It seems a little weird that if there was something involving Juve, it would be investigated immediately. But in the case of Inter, it's not. But let's see where this goes. But it is something to keep an eye on. So we did want to mention it. But once we get more information, as more information becomes available, we'll obviously bring it to you. But yeah, that's kind of the news in Serie A, and that's the big bombshell that we'll be keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, I mean, John, what do I always say? Where there's smoke, there's fire. It's just really strange that no other journalist is talking about this one. And when it was Juventus a couple years back, again, 15 points deducted from them. It was all over X. It was probably the most depressing thing since 06, right? So,
and it does seem louder than your general fake news. So it's been a little louder. It's been picked up a little more, but again, no official investigation. But once there is, we'll obviously bring all that information to you. So that's kind of the general Serie A news. We'll go into here. It's also a big time for the national team. So we'll talk a little bit here about the Italian national team. Call-ups happened. We had a squad that was released, which we'll show you here, but changes have been made. Big changes have been made. So between players being unavailable for injuries, lack of fitness, or just plain rejection, this has been a little modified. But this is the squad coming up for the two World Cup qualifying games against Moldova and Norway. Obviously, on here, you got Acerbi. Acerbi rejected the call-up. There seems to be a little bit of a spat in the media between him and Spalletti. He came out and said he felt disrespected. And Spalletti kind of chimed back saying, one day we'll have this conversation. He can explain to me why he feels he was disrespected, and I'll explain to him how he let down the national team. So Spalletti always wanted to have a quick comeback. But given this, Acerbi coming down or not accepting it and already having the injuries we had leads to Rugani popping up again on the national team. So not only popping back up with Juve, he's popping up on the national team. But let's go through this list. This was the list provided straight from the FIGC Twitter account. So Donnarumma, Meret, Vicario, Acerbi, Bastoni, Buongiorno, Cambiaso, Coppola, Di Lorenzo, Di Marco, Gabbia, Gatti, Udo. Oh my gosh, I'm just gonna. It's not happening for me here. If you want to step in,
Udoji?
Udoji. Yeah. Oh man, I was struggling with it there for some reason. Zappacosta, Barella, Casade, Fratesi, Locatelli, Ricci, Rovella, Tonali, Keane, Luca, Maldini, Orsolini, Raspadori, Rutegui. Rutegui, another one who was a striker that has been linked to Juve. There's been a little more chatter today, but there hasn't been too much real concrete news there, so I didn't want to bring it up. But first, let's talk about this roster here. A little underwhelming-ish. Again, knowing that we had some big missed players. So we'll scratch off Acerbi. We talked about that one, but Calafiore obviously missing from here. Buongiorno,
I think he's still injured as well.
Yeah, he will not be there. So that's another one on the list. Gatti, I believe, is also not going to be there.
I believe Gabbia, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I think Gabbia as well.
Wow.
So that was that.
And Locatelli.
Camuso was not there, and so that's why he was not. He was injured. Locatelli gets injured in training as well as Keane. So they're
Keane
also
today, this morning, Keane.
So this is, aside from the fact it's a little underwhelming, it's also getting kind of Frankensteined even further just because of the fact that there's more going on here. Now, it should still be enough to get you through Norway and Moldova, but this is also a national team that has not made the last two World Cups. And in some way,
worrisome, isn't it, John?
100% it's worrisome. And not even just, okay, you can't even blame the group stages, because then even last year you lose to Macedonia. You don't even get to that final playoff game with Portugal. So it's very concerning that this is going to be the start of it. I guess, what are your initial thoughts on the team here? No Di Gregorio, somebody who we obviously see close here. But, what are your initial, I guess, thoughts on this team?
Like you said, very underwhelming, concerning. Watching them play, it's tough, isn't it? It's not the same that we grew up with in 06, from what we remember when the big one, or even the Euro 2022. But I feel like they struck lightning in a bottle with that one, and that team was just run Chiesa and then Spinazzola, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been very underwhelming, and it's quite concerning, especially not making 2 World Cups in a row now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it can be 3. It shouldn't be 3. They gotta break this. Spalletti was brought in for this reason and this reason alone. Now, I mean, going back to Spalletti, that being said, I was never really high on the guy, especially
Mm-hmm.
at his Roma days. He did it with Napoli. He won his cup. I was surprised to see him leave a year afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But if he doesn't do it,
I think ADL has that effect on guys, but yeah.
Yeah, no. If they don't do it, then like, are you keeping Spalletti at this point? Like, are you? I don't even know. I wouldn't. He's too. What's the word? Like his tactics. It's too kick and rush. It's too running. Too much pacing. Not a lot of much passing. It's not very defensive focused, which I don't like. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too high on it.
Yeah, I think to your point, I think we should get through these games.
Yeah.
If you don't, it's concerning, but it's not a guarantee, as we talked about. Spalletti, this is going to be the real test because this is now his team. I think you could give a pass at the last Euros somewhat. I don't think that game against Switzerland deserves a full pass. It was just brutal from beginning to end, but he came in a rough situation, right? It was just Mancini dropped out to go to Saudi Arabia. The spot was open. He had just left Napoli. He wanted the job, but to get his tactics going, to get his real style of play, and to get his real team together, it was too rushed. And at least that's the excuse that they're also giving. So this is his real test.
Yeah.
The World Cup has also expanded. 2026 being in North America, it's expanded. And there's no reason why they should miss out on this World Cup as well. That would be a huge travesty, and that would definitely mean the end of Spalletti here. But with these injuries and with this roster, I mean, they're not invincible. It's not a guarantee that everything works out successfully for them. So I'm willing to give Spalletti the time. I like the character of Spalletti. I like his confidence. I think he can be a little too combative.
Yeah, is it confidence or is it ego?
Well, and that's what's going to be decided. And at times it's been both. At times at Napoli, it was confidence. At times at Roma, it was ego. You don't fight with Francesco Totti. You don't sit Totti on the bench there. You don't do the things you do to Totti that he did. And again, so this is going to be his real test. But obviously, a bit of an underwhelming squad. Underwhelming, especially given the fact that all these injuries or lack of fitness concerns here. But it should still be enough to see them through. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on who else gets called up here. The only one I've really seen is Rugani. I haven't seen too many other call-ups, but as they are called up, we'll obviously talk about anything. But yeah, they have some big games here, and we'll see what they can do with it. The first one is Friday, being tomorrow, because we're recording here on the Thursday. And then from there, forget the date of the other game, but
it might be Monday.
Yeah, I'll get that I'll get that here for everybody in just a second. But yeah, so Norway is tomorrow, and that'll be the first matchup. And then from there, they have Moldova on Monday. You're correct. So Friday and Monday, 2 big games. The group also has Estonia in there, as well as Israel. So again, it should be a group that they can get through.
Yeah, you're topping that group. You have to. I'm sorry.
You should, but we never know anymore with this team. Right. So, but the World Cup is expanded. So, and we'll talk a lot more about the World Cup. We'll talk about that structure. I think how the structure in the World Cup is going to be is not really defined either. So as we get that information, we'll talk about that as well. But that brings us basically towards the end of the pod here. Upcoming pods you're going to look out for. We're going to record, as we talked about multiple times through here, FIFA Club World Cup preview show. We'll break down all the groups. We'll break down Juventus's group in specific detail. Dom and I will actually be going to the game in Philadelphia. We'll be driving down and meeting Juventini down in Philadelphia. So we'll have that preview show. That's going to be great. We'll have that preview show. We'll talk about the squad. We'll talk more about Tudor in that, and specifically that Club World Cup team, and give our predictions as well as what we think is going to happen there. We'll also be doing podcasts here Monday, Friday. That's typically going to be when we'll release our podcast. Again, if there's any emergency pod, any big news, maybe a Jonathan David signing comes up and comes to fruition or something out of nowhere, we will come to you with that news live. We have our socials up as well. You'll see them at the end of this broadcast here. They'll be there. Please follow us. Please interact with us. There's something you love, let us know. There's something you don't love, let us know. We're willing to take any comments, anything like that, anything that can improve that or engage conversation with you, the fans, or even give us an opinion that something we can think about. Maybe it'll change our mind, or maybe, we'll just argue with you. But either way, as long as we're engaging and interacting, I think that's what this is about. That's what this platform's about. That's what we set out to do with this podcast. So I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank you for coming along on the ride, and keep an eye out because there's big things coming for the Bianconeri Bros and Juventus in total. So Dom, thanks for the ride together, and I'm looking forward to a great year and more ahead. Yeah, buddy. It's going to be great. So take care, Juventini. Have a good night, and we look forward to sitting down and talking to you all